Imagine nature handing you the perfect alibi for a crime. On the night between the 7th and the 8th of December, 2000, Dublin was hit by an Atlantic storm so fierce that streets which would normally be full of life in the run-up to Christmas were almost empty. The wind was howling at 90 kilometers an hour, and the rain was falling in curtains so dense they wiped out the visibility of the security cameras. In the middle of that meteorological chaos, at 4:14 in the morning, a young man walks alone. He's carrying a big blue and yellow umbrella fighting against the wind. His name is Trevor Deely. He's 22 years old, and that grainy, blurred image you're looking at is the last time the world ever saw him. Trevor didn't disappear down a dark alley. He wasn't dragged into a car in front of witnesses. He simply evaporated. He left behind a devastated family, a police investigation that has been running for 24 years, and a single question no one has been able to answer. How can someone vanish without leaving a single trace in one of the most heavily monitored areas of the city? To understand the weight of this mystery, we first have to understand who Trevor was. And the answer, perhaps, is what makes this case so unsettling. Trevor was, by all accounts, a normal guy. The youngest of 4 siblings, born in Naas, he had achieved what many people his age wanted, a stable, promising job in the IT department at Bank of Ireland Asset Management. We're not talking about someone who moved in dangerous circles or lived a double life. His colleagues described him as responsible, hardworking, and very sociable. He had just come back from a dream trip to Alaska and had his whole life ahead of him. He had no debts, he didn't use drugs, and he had no known enemies. From a risk profile point of view, he was practically zero. That Thursday, December 7th, began as a day of celebration. The company Christmas party started at the Burlington Hotel, and, as usual, the group ended the night at Buck Whaley's, a club on Leeson Street. According to all the statements given to the police, Trevor was in a good mood. He danced, he drank with moderation, maybe a bit tipsy, but not out of control. And he enjoyed the night like any other 22-year-old. But when he left the club, at around 3:30 in the morning, he ran into a logistical problem. Outside, the storm was getting worse, and to make things worse, a taxi strike had paralyzed the city. Getting a ride home was almost impossible. So, cold and soaked, Trevor made a decision that would change the course of events, to walk to his office, which was nearby, to pick up an umbrella. This is where the story stops being an anecdote about a night out and turns into a case file. At 3:35 in the morning, Trevor reaches the rear entrance to his office on Wilton Terrace, but the security cameras reveal something chilling. Trevor wasn't alone. Half an hour before he arrived, the cameras had recorded a man dressed in black standing by the gate. And here's the detail that makes pure coincidence hard to swallow. Even though the storm was brutal, the man didn't just stay tucked in under the pillar to shelter from the rain. The footage shows him stepping out into the rain to look up the street, checking who was coming, and then retreating back into the shadow. His behavior doesn't look like someone just trying to keep dry. It looks like someone actively waiting for a particular person to arrive. When Trevor gets there, they exchange a few words. There's no audio. We don't know what was said, but it doesn't look like a violent argument. Trevor goes into the building, the door closes, and the man in black stays outside, watching. Inside the office, Trevor doesn't just grab an umbrella and leave. We know this because of the computer records. He had just come back from that dream trip to Alaska, and he wanted to share it. He used the bank's fast connection to upload and sync the photos from the trip. He was happy, making plans for the future. Before stepping back out, he made one last phone call to his best friend, Glenn. He left a voicemail that the police have analyzed over and over. His voice sounded calm, cheerful. He said something like, "I'm heading home. Everything's fine." That was the last time his voice was recorded. Shortly after 4 in the morning, Trevor went back out into the storm. This time he was prepared. He was carrying a large umbrella with the ACC Bank logo. Everything suggests his only plan was to get home, sleep, and get ready for the following day. Trevor began the walk towards his flat in Ballsbridge. It was a route he had taken countless times, but that night, the streets were deserted. The wind was brutal and the visibility was almost zero. 4:14 in the morning. Haddington Road. I want you to look closely at this image. It's grainy, it's dark, but it's historic. It's the last time a camera captured Trevor Deely. He's walking with a steady pace, fighting against the wind. And right here, 30 seconds later, another figure appears. Someone else is walking in the same direction, behind Trevor. For years, investigators and the family believed this was the key moment. Was he being followed? Was this the man in black from The Office? Here, I have to stop for a second to be completely fair with the truth. On internet forums, you'll find 1,000 theories about this man walking behind him. But the reality is that in a later review of the case between 2017 and 2023, the Irish police, the Garda E, identified this man. They questioned him. They checked his alibi, and they reached a definitive conclusion. He had nothing to do with the case. He was simply another person walking home in the rain, and that, ironically, makes the mystery even worse. If the man who appears behind him on camera wasn't involved, then what happened? Trevor crossed Baggot Street Bridge and walked out of the camera's frame. From that millisecond on, it's as if he stopped existing. When Trevor didn't show up for work on Monday, all the alarms went off. What followed was one of the most exhaustive searches in Ireland's recent history. They drained sections of the Grand Canal. They checked the rivers. They searched hospitals, police stations, alleyways. Nothing. No umbrella, no mobile phone, not a single piece of clothing. His family refused to give up. They plastered Dublin with his face. They helped raise large rewards for any useful information. But the city remained silent. It's hard to explain how unusual this is. In a modern city, full of cameras, with a mobile phone in his pocket, it is technically almost impossible to disappear without leaving some kind of digital or physical trace. But Trevor did. Hope flickered briefly in 2017. An informant claimed that Trevor had been murdered by a known local criminal and buried in woodland near Chapelizod. The police took it very seriously. They excavated the area for weeks. They found a weapon. They found drugs. But of Trevor, not a single trace. Another dead end for a family that has spent decades waiting for a phone call. Today, 24 years later, the case is still open. Forensic technology has advanced, cameras are better, but we are still in the same place as that December dawn. We have a man waiting at a gate who has never been identified. We have a walk home that never reached its destination, and we have a void where a 22-year-old should be. The most terrifying thing about the case of Trevor Deely is not the violence, because we don't even have clear proof of violence. It's the fragility. It reminds us that security is an illusion, that you can do everything right, have a good job, let your friends know, walk through a supposedly safe area, and still, if the circumstances line up against you, you can disappear. Someone in Dublin knows what happened that night. Someone knows who the man at the gate was. And as long as that person stays silent, the Deely family will go on looking for answers in the rain. The case of Trevor Deely scares us because it destroys one of the great lies of our time, the idea that it's impossible to disappear in the 21st century. We live confident, believing that GPS, our banking history, and the thousands of cameras recording us are like an invisible shield that protects us. We think that if something happens to us, the system will save us. But Trevor taught us a much colder truth. Technology is not a guardian. It's just a notary. It simply certifies the exact minute you were there. But it has no power to stop you from no longer being there. In a world full of digital eyes, we are still vulnerable. Cameras exist to reconstruct what happened, not to prevent it from happening. If you want us to keep rescuing stories like this from oblivion, subscribe to The Case File Voice. In the next video, we'll give voice to the case file of Jane Pritchard, a scientist murdered in 1986 in a forest full of people where nobody saw anything.